Live from New York, this is the Harvey Hour. My name is Stephen Harvey. It's great to have you in today on a Tuesday. Happy New Year's Eve. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. How you doing today on this New Year's Eve Tuesday?
I'm ready to roll, man. These topics, we got some good things to talk about tonight.
We do. Last night's game, a little bit of controversy over the Lions putting out their starters, but we're going to get into that, as well as Brock Purdy. Did he lose himself some money? We got a lot to talk about, so let's actually jump right into it with our first topic of tonight's show. So last night, the Detroit Lions put off a thrilling 40-34 win over the San Francisco 49ers, tying an NFL record with their sixth 40-point game of the season. Goff was pretty phenomenal, over 300 yards passing, along with 3 touchdowns, and Jahmyr Gibbs totaled 163 all-purpose yards, as well as an important touchdown late in the game. Kirby Joseph, safety or defensive back for the Detroit Lions, 2 crucial interceptions helped seal the victory, which gives Detroit a 14-2 record. Everything on the line in Week 18 against the Minnesota Vikings. It's going to be a pretty interesting matchup with that not only claiming the NFC North, the winner of that game claiming the NFC North. That team will also claim the number 1 seed in the NFC, which the Lions desperately need with a bunch of their injuries, so they need to rest up. So my question to you is, how impressive was this win for the Detroit Lions?
Very impressive win. I mean, the 49ers played well in this game. Brock Purdy, he had 377 passing yards, 3 TDs. The 2 interceptions killed him. That was the turning point in the game. Those are the turning point plays. Joseph having a fantastic year. He leads the league in interceptions, right? I think he has 9 now. So that was something. And I thought it was a great game. It was fun to watch. It was very close. Dan Gamble going for it on 4th down a couple of times there, getting a touchdown on one. Poor the 49ers president of John Lynch.
He's the GM.
He was upset. Did you see him in the stands there? He was going nuts. He was angry, but they gave up the 4th down touchdown. My takeaways in the game for the Lions is still very explosive. They're balanced. They continue to score plenty of points, which is a must for them given all the injuries they have on defense. They got to keep doing that. It's the 5th game with at least 40 points and no turnovers. They had no turnovers. Goff, very sharp. Gibbs tore through San Francisco's defense. I think he likes being the number 1 back without Montgomery there. I don't think they lost much there unless he gets tired or he gets hurt too. But Montgomery is coming back at some point there. But still, he got that MCL sprain. That's a tough injury. They settled for 2 field goals and turned it over on downs once in the red zone there when Dan Gamble failed there once. But their power ended up being everything and engulfing San Francisco. On the Niners side of the ball, to me, the takeaway there is the personnel shortcomings contributed to their downfall. These weaknesses really didn't show up in the first half. I thought Shanahan had a great game plan. Getting Pearsall involved. Pearsall looks pretty good, right? He had like 140 yards receiving. That was fantastic. The passing game worked well in the first 2 quarters, especially on those crossing routes to Kittle. He had several big gains there. The game was decided, I think, when Detroit adjusted and they got those 2 interceptions. And San Francisco they gave up on the run from the beginning of the game, which might not have been the case if either Mason or CMC had been able to play. It was 1st and 10, and it was a 6-point game when Purdy threw his second pick. So I think the fact that they had no running game was a factor there and contributed to Brock Purdy throwing those interceptions. I'd say the Lions' defense is a big issue for them next week and for the playoffs. San Francisco had 3 TDs on is first 3 drives. Joseph's interceptions were big on a sailed throw by Purdy on the first one, and he jumped the route on a pass over the middle on his second pick. The Lions know that with all the injuries on defense, they have to play nearly perfect. I think, to keep this run going. As long as they continue to play with great offense and continue to get a turnover here and there, I think they probably can keep that run going. Next week is the big game, man, for them. If they win that game, they're the 1 seed. If they lose it, they're the 5 seed, and then they have to play on the road. So if they win it, they get to rest and maybe get a few players back. If they lose it, then they're out there in no man's land with no crowd cheering for them, playing on the road. So they got to win that game, I think. I think that's big for them. I think maybe the Niners ought to consider a new field goal kicker. I mean, look at Mooney. He had missed 52 and 51 and 58. Probably shouldn't even tried to kick the 58-yarder. I mean, that might have had a factor in the game. It gave the the Lions excellent field position. He did hurt his ankle earlier in the year. He hasn't been the same since, but he's only made 10 out of his last 16 field goals. He missed an extra point, and he booted the onside kick out of bounds. So I'd say his job is on the line there. Probably not for this year, but I'll probably bring in some competition for him and next year in the preseason. Biggest game for the Lions is next week. And the 49ers, the Vikings look great. The Darnold playing his best football right now. They're on a roll. They've only lost 2 games. I can't wait to watch it.
Well, I'll say this. This is the Lions team that I expected. Heavy offense, and their defense is what is to be expected when you have guys who are your 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th string cornerback out there or defensive back because you're so banged up. So the Lions defense was obviously the most shocking part of this game because they got dominated in every facet. 3rd down, the 49ers went 5 of 8, and in the red zone, the Niners went 5 of 5. That's not going to cut it against Philadelphia, against Minnesota next week. That's not going to cut it against these top-tier teams, and if they do somehow make it to the Super Bowl, that's not going to cut it against a Baltimore or a Kansas City or, just in case it happens, a Cincinnati or even a Buffalo if they get to that point. It's not going to cut it out. You can't let a team go 5 for 5 in the red zone, especially with the 49ers team that the prior week, their head coach said that they were mathematically out of it the week before, so they really played with no heart against a Miami team that against good teams, and I think that if you look at the 49ers at face value, we consider them a good team as we have for the past several years at this point, and they got absolutely taken to the cleaners by an inferior Miami Dolphins team who is still sort of holding on for playoff hopes, which they currently actually have a higher seeding over the Cincinnati Bengals, who are in a really interesting spot in Week 18, which we're going to talk about on Friday, because of the decision the Kansas City Chiefs are making in their game this upcoming week. I think that puts the Denver Broncos in a situation to remain in that 7 spot and essentially eliminate both the Dolphins and the Bengals just because the Chiefs are sitting everybody, and I saw a report that they may play their 3rd-string quarterback in that game, basically handing the game over to Denver. But when it comes to Detroit Lions, Goff was phenomenal. 9 of 14 on 3rd down, 2 of 3 on 4th down. Dan Gamble did his best job. The 3rd and 12 play, sort of the hook and ladder play. It was a phenomenal play call. This Detroit team is a very, very special team, and they're in a very sort of fortunate but also unfortunate situation because they have 2 phenomenal coordinators, Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator, and also the offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson. I think Ben Johnson, obviously, he's going to be the most sought-after coordinator for a head coaching job in this upcoming offseason. I think Aaron Glenn should and will get calls to be a head coach next season, but they're going to be gone after this year, most likely. People thought that Ben Johnson would be gone this past season. He decided to stay, which we now look at the Lions offense. They're averaging about 33 points a game, which is absurd to say, but they're going to be gone. So this is really Detroit's, I think, probably their best shot. I'm not going to say their only shot, but their best shot at winning a Super Bowl because they have their top 2 coordinators still there. They have Jared Goff playing great. They have Jahmyr Gibbs playing on an, sort of unearthly level of efficiency, especially with David Montgomery out. I thought there might be a little bit of a dip in production just because of the 1-2 combo. David Montgomery tires him out, then Jahmyr Gibbs runs hard right through them. That honestly didn't actually happen. Jahmyr Gibbs has been able to keep that level of intensity, that level of consistency, even with David Montgomery out. So, and also Sam Laporte is there. Aiden Hutchinson's out, but their defense has remained relatively consistent pass rush-wise. They're still getting about the same amount of quarterback pressure percentage, even with Hutchinson out. But the primary asterisk for this team is the health of their defense, because this, like I mentioned earlier, 5 of 5 in the red zone for an inferior San Francisco team that is reeling right now. That's an issue. You go up against these top tier teams in the NFC, and if you make it to the Super Bowl somehow in the AFC, that's going to be a massive issue. You're not going to be Kansas City in the Super Bowl, letting them go 5 for 5 in the red zone. You're not going to allow Philadelphia, you're not going to move past Philadelphia or Minnesota next week if you let them go 5 for 5 in the red zone. It's just not going to happen. You need to come up with some stops, and fortunately for them, they were able to do it when it mattered the most, especially that second interception. The 49ers still had an opportunity. You're only down by 6. You're on the Detroit 35, and Brock Purdy throws a ball, and Kirby Joseph made a phenomenal play on the football to get his second interception of the game, which really sealed the fate for the 49ers in that one, who actually did respond with a touchdown with Joshua Dobbs going out there and actually throwing a couple pretty nice footballs when Brock Purdy went down with an injury. But this Lions team, as I predicted in the preseason, they were my Super Bowl pick, and I think that with this high-flying offense, this is how they're going to need to win games now with their defense as banged up as it is. Because if Jared Goff slips up just a little bit, I do not think the defense will be able to hold against Minnesota next week if Jared Goff starts throwing interceptions. They're very, very fortunate that Jared Goff was as efficient as he has been the past few weeks. 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and I think, 4 straight games, something like that? I mean, they put up a graphic on ESPN that only Tom Brady and I think Peyton Manning are the only other quarterbacks in that sort of range of 5, I think, of 300-plus yard games and 3 touchdowns in a single game for that long of a game streak. So he's in very, very promising territory when it comes to his efficiency and his effectiveness for this Detroit team. It's crazy to believe that no matter who wins or loses next week, there will be a 14-win team as the 5 seed in a wild card. So the Detroit Lions, they desperately need this 1 seed. They need to get that bye. They need to rest up because Dan Campbell, we could complain about, he started all of his starters in a meaningless game. I think that this game did matter a lot, not for playoff implications, not for seeding implications, just strictly for a moral level, or to raise morale rather. Because you go out and you get, I think, embarrassed kind of by the Buffalo Bills. You need to find some footing, and you crapped all over the Chicago Bears. Absolutely, they're just a bad team. But you need to find against a team that has a promising head coach. The Bears don't have that. With promising talent, everyone thought Brock Purdy was an MVP candidate last year. A defense that still had Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. You needed to go out there and needed to perform at a high level, which they ended up doing. You put up 40 points against this team. It's impressive nonetheless. You're going up against Minnesota now on Sunday Night Football. I don't care about starting your starters. Yes, they're fortunate not to get out there with an injury, but I was thoroughly impressed with the way that Detroit just keeps finding ways to score, keep finding ways to win, and that's really at the hands of Dan Campbell in some sense, but also in the hands of Ben Johnson. So
I think Jared Goff, I would think he'd get a little stronger look at MVP, given that he makes everybody around him better, and he's just had a great season. Without him, after all those injuries happened, man, they wouldn't be in the playoff picture, I don't think.
People could argue that it's Jahmyr Gibbs. People can argue that their defense comes up in some spots like they did in this one with Kirby Joseph. Currently, he's 5th with at least FanDuel odds plus 20,000. So
yeah, he's not going to get it for sure. At least his name is in the top 5. I think he's had a fantastic year, and despite quite a bit of adversity, and their team, I like the resilience of their team. I like their. I used to think the Dan Gamble thing was more about him than it was about the team, but I think he's done it in a way that makes the team feel like, wow, coach is counting on us. We can do it for him, and most of the time they do. And they proved it last night with that touchdown on 4th down. That was pretty impressive.
I agree. Let's get into the other side of this, though, because despite the 49ers' 40-34 loss to the Lions, Brock Purdy did have a pretty good game. throwing 377 yards along with 3 touchdowns plus a rushing score, so 4 total touchdowns. He exited the game late with a right elbow injury. It turned out to be some sort of nerve inflammation. The injury's fine. It's nothing serious, but he probably won't play in Week 18. But here's the thing. Brock Purdy in this offseason is now eligible for a contract extension, with a lot of estimates being in the $60 million range, which Dak Prescott got right before this season started. So San Francisco does face a crucial decision, but after this season, them going 6-10, potentially 6-11, do you think the 49ers should actually end up paying Brock Purdy around the $60 million mark?
That's a tough question. I think looking at his contract for next year, he'd be making $1.1 million in the last year of his rookie contract. That's pretty enticing for the 49ers in terms of their expense for the players. They could then franchise tag him after that. So I don't know. I think it's kind of a tougher decision. I do think that having lost 6 of their last 7 games is not good for his credentials in terms of getting that giant payday. He says it's just been not clean football across the board. Last couple of years we played team football for 4 quarters, and I felt like we were pretty dominant. This year it's just been hit or miss. The 49ers are said to still be committed to Purdy. And why wouldn't they be? I mean, when he came in December of 2022 to be the starter, he's ranked very high in many stats during that period, but he's regressed a little bit in 2023. But many people say that's because the injuries to some of the key players, and I kind of believe that some of that is true. But what would the extension look like, and how will it affect who stays and who goes? It's more complicated than just Brock Purdy and his contract. Should the 49ers say goodbye to some of their own and bring in some fresh faces, or make a few small tweaks with most of their own returning? Will Shanahan shake up the coaching staff? At the league meetings in March, the owner, Jed York, said that Purdy will be taken care of with what could be the largest raise in NFL history, but that was a long time ago, and a lot has changed since then. The owner was expecting to go to the Super Bowl again when he said that, and that hasn't happened. And Dak Prescott sets the market, 4 years, $240 million. Since taking over as a starter in December of 2022, Brock Purdy's been 4th in quarterback rating, 6th in passing yards, 1st in yards per attempt, tied for 1st in expected points per drop back, and 7th in passing TDs. However, in the past year, you have Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, Tua, and Goff signing extensions worth in the $53 to $55 million range, with an average of $112 million fully guaranteed. This season, as I mentioned, Purdy's dropped to 10th in QBR. He led the league in 2023 at 73.4. TDs, he's down. I think he's got 20 now versus 31 last year. Yards per attempt, 8.3 now, down from 9.6. Completion percentage, 65%, down from 64%. He doesn't play well in bad weather either. I mean, 5 starts in the rain or snow. He's just 2-3 with a 49.7 QBR and 57% completion rate. He struggles, when there's injuries on the team to the 49ers' best players. I think that to be understood. That's true for many quarterbacks. When they lose the people they're comfortable playing with or the stars, they tend to struggle. All that said, I think he's produced well. And he outperformed his rookie contract by a long shot, went to the Super Bowl, right, making $1 million a year. The alternatives, as I said at the beginning, play out to 2025 and then franchise tag him. That's an option, or sign him to a shorter-term deal with a big raise to see one more year before giving him a long-term deal. That's a possibility. He says he needs to get back to playing with the chip on his shoulder that he had in the last 2 years, trying to prove myself on every play that I'm the guy. The 49ers have got 9 players in the top 15 at the top 15 at pay in their position: Bosa, CMC, Warner, Kittle, Yusek, Williams, and Ayuk. Three of them are in the top 5. They count 46.5% against the estimated 2025 salary cap. Maybe they got to part ways with some of these guys if they want to give Brock Purdy the giant contract. My bet is they will give him a big contract. It may not have them as much guaranteed money in there as some of these other contracts have had, and it may not be quite $60 million when they were talking 65 before. I think that's out the window. I don't think that's going to happen, and I think they will part ways with some of their players to make room for that. Hargrove, I mean, he's somebody they could let go. Debo has not played well at all this year. I don't know whether they really think he's a keeper. They have 24 players set for restricted or unrestricted free agency in 2025, including Greenlaw and Hufanga, who have been big on defense for them. And in coaching, maybe they let Sorensen go. He's they're number 30th in red zone defense. They could bring back Salah, right? Or maybe Albrecht. They looked at Albrecht before he went to the Jets. So I think maybe defensive coordinator is a potential coaching change.
Well, I think first off, if we're looking at a number at $60 million, I'm not paying Brock Purdy $60 million because what does he do above and beyond everybody else? We can't look at Trevor Lawrence and say that is an example of what a quarterback that hasn't done much or in the NFL and he gets a big-time contract. I don't think he's an example. Same thing as we can't look at the Deshaun Watson contract and make that the precedent of guaranteed money in the NFL. Deshaun Watson has been statistically, if you look at the numbers, they have historically one of the worst offenses under the Deshaun Watson era the Cleveland Browns have had in NFL history. So I'm not saying that Deshaun Watson should be the precedent for guaranteed money in the NFL. I think Dak getting $60 million per year. Everybody understands that Jerry Jones overpaid because that's what Jerry Jones always does. He waits to the 11th hour, the 59th minute, the 59th second to give people their contract. That's why I think Micah Parsons will probably become the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL, maybe, at least the highest paid defensive player in NFL history, just because he's going to drag it out long and long and long, and then Micah Parsons is still going to put the same or near the same production as he always does, and then he's going to get paid a bunch of money instead of getting, a bit of a discount because the salary cap goes up, the price of every player goes up. As more big-time players get paid, Micah Parsons will sit there and say, what about me? But let's take a look at, because I would say that this is, in Brock Purdy's very young career, this could be an average or even a bad year. So how about this? We go to a quarterback the 49ers did make the highest paid player in the NFL just a few years ago. Let's take a look at what an average year is for this quarterback and compare it to how Brock Purdy is doing this season. Jimmy Garoppolo in 2021. Now, screw the record because right now they're not doing so well. But the completion percentage, Jimmy G's better. The passing yards are essentially the same. Yards per pass, Jimmy G is 0.1 higher, but essentially the same. Same touchdown to interception ratio. Jimmy Garoppolo actually has a better passer rating than Brock Purdy this year. And remember that offensive line that people are talking about with Trent Williams, and he's so great. Even with Trent Williams out, they get sacked basically the same amount of times. But here's where it really matters, and this is why I say you can't pay Brock Purdy $60 million. Because if you take a look at when it matters the most, how does Brock Purdy do? Let's not even worry about the fourth quarter. Let's just take it in the second half. If he trails at any point in the second half, he's 3 of 7 touchdown to interception ratio, a passer rating of 74.7, and he has 9 giveaways this season. That is terrible. Absolutely terrible. And then AP, I want to give the proper respect here. Associated Press, Josh Dubow, and I apologize if I'm saying that name wrong, he decided to break down some numbers. So let's do when it actually matters in the fourth quarter or in overtime, in the regular season or in the playoffs, by within one score. This is Brock Purdy. 41 for 72, 502 yards, 3 touchdowns, 7 picks, a 52.9 passer rating. And here's the big one. He ranks 151st out of 160 qualified quarterbacks with at least 50-plus attempts in that scenario since the year 2000. Brock Purdy, I'm not saying he's that bad, but in the clutch situations when you need him the most, the numbers prove it and the eye test proves it, he is that bad. He had an opportunity late in this game against Detroit when he absolutely cooked that defense all game. had an opportunity to, and he was driving down to put them up by one singular point. And what does he do? He throws it into harm's way in the middle of the field, and Kirby Joseph makes a phenomenal play on the football, sealing the 49ers' fate for not only the season, but I also think that it honestly seals maybe Brock Purdy's fate because he won't be getting those big-time dollars. He won't be getting the $60 to $65 million that maybe some people are estimating he gets. Because we see a very similar situation when it comes to Tua. Because we look at, by the way, I think the Dolphins have probably the worst backup quarterback situation in the NFL, or very close to it. So it's kind of unfair to say, well, if Tua and their backup quarterback, they're not the exact same level of production. Yeah, because you have Mike White and Skylar Thompson as your backup quarterback, or Snoop Huntley as your backup quarterbacks. Obviously, Tua's a very decently high-quality starter in the NFL. Snoop Huntley isn't. Mike White isn't. Skylar Thompson isn't. If you take a look at like a true backup quarterback, Joe Flacco, he puts up better production than the starting quarterback, Anthony Richardson, because he can actually complete passes. We've seen situations where backup quarterbacks do play very well. Nick Mullins had a couple beautiful games. Mac Jones has had a couple great games for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I'm not... Yes, I think the 49ers will pay him. It's just a question of what's the dollar amount. Because it isn't going to be $60 million. Because Tua didn't break the bank after Jordan Love and Trevor Lawrence were all getting $55 million. You know what he got? He got a little bit above 50, which is exactly where I would put him. Just because, what's your other option? Now, I thought he'd be at the $49 million range just because I don't think, if you can't play in cold weather, because the Super Bowl and the playoffs are always played in some form of cold weather unless you're the 1 seed, but you're not going to be the 1 seed with Los Angeles, Buffalo, Kansas City, Baltimore, Pittsburgh sometimes, and even Cincinnati. You're probably not going to be the 1 seed in the AFC now, tomorrow, the next day, 3 years from now. It's just not going to happen with the level of competition you're up against. Well, then you're kind of screwed. You're not going to play well. And especially when your head coach is, 1-15 or 1-16 against teams with a winning record or playoff teams, that's an issue. So that's why I thought 49 would be a nice number for Tua. He got a little bit over 50. But no, Brock Purdy should not be paid $60 million because think about it. You can say, well, he made the NFC Championship game and also another Super Bowl. Well, so did a guy who was paid the highest, who used to be the highest paid player in the league, Jimmy Garoppolo, and he was making $25 million per year. Currently,
that was a long time ago.
What, the Super Bowl and the NFC Championship game?
No, 2021. A lot has changed since 2021. There's been a lot of inflation. Well,
no, he didn't get paid in 2021.
He had a $25 million contract in 2021, right?
He didn't get signed for the 49ers except for 2018.
What year was it that you had those comparison stats?
I don't have his contract in front of me.
But when you were comparing the stats,
that was just an average season in 2021.
Oh, I'd say.
That was just because I'm not going to pick his best season where he went 13-3 because this is not Brock Purdy's best season. I want to give an average season for Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy. Because if we remember, actually, when Purdy came in, they were putting up similar numbers. Jimmy G was and Brock Purdy was when CMC got there. So this is a Kyle Shanahan system. When you have a qualified starting quarterback level, starting level quarterback at that quarterback position, this is the type of production you can get. I'm not picking C.J. Beathard or Nick Mullins or Brian Hoyer and saying, well, Kyle Shanahan didn't make them like Brock Purdy or Jimmy G. Yeah, you know why? Because they're not starting level quarterbacks. Brock Purdy's a starting level quarterback. Jimmy Garoppolo at the time was a starting level quarterback. So I'm saying no to 60. I know Spotrac has, 59.7 million or something like that. He's not going to be a $60 million quarterback because
I don't think I agree with that, but he is going to get a decent payday.
So what would you give him?
Well, I mentioned the Lawrence Love Tua Goff.
So if you say $55 million,
53 to 55, and $112 million fully guaranteed contract. I think if I were the last player in the draft selected, and the record that I've had the last couple of years, and the way things have gone this year, I'd be pretty happy with that.
So you would say 53 to 55?
Yeah.
Based on what?
Based on these other contracts and these other guys and the way they play.
But me and you both agree that the Trevor Lawrence contract was absurd.
Yeah, that is an absurd contract.
Just like how we thought the Deshaun Watson contract was absurd.
Tua's contract, I think he did very well to get what he got. And I think they could have waited a year They could have waited this year and franchise
2018,
tagged
by
him.
the way.
Maybe the 49ers say, hey, wait a minute, let's just franchise it. We'll let him play on $1 million contract next year, and we'll franchise tag him if he has a great season. But to me, that's not really very fair. I mean, the guy.
Well, that's the NFL. They don't care about your emotions. They care about the business side of it. We're going to talk about a player in particular who dealt with the business side of it and is proving himself correct, and that's Saquon Barkley. Joe Shane wouldn't give him $250,000 per year extra for his contract, and now he's about to set NFL history in a rushing record in his first year with the team. It's the business side of it. You have to take emotion out of it. If you're a fan, you have to take emotion out of it because this is the business side. Are you sure Brock Purdy, with an aging team, George Kittle's not going to be there for another 5 years. He won't see the end of Brock Purdy's contract. Deebo Samuel may be gone by the end of this year.
Yeah.
You'll have Brandon Ayuk for 3 more years, but right now in this year he didn't play very well. Pearsall finally had a great game.
Yeah, he's an up-and-coming player. They may draft some other really good players.
Christian McCaffrey's not going to be there to the end of your contract, and he's banged up all the damn time. So, we're seeing Brock Purdy.
Brock Purdy is still 10th in QBR this season. I mean, it's dropped off from being first last year, but he's still a top 10 quarterback. Not
this year.
He's number 10 in QBR this season.
Well, that's ESPN's QBR. Just look at the eye test. I put Jaden Daniels over him. I put Sam Darnold, Jordan Love. I'll list it right now. I'd put Jared Goff. I'd put not Patrick Mahomes. I'd put Jaden Daniels. I would put Joe Burrow. I'd put Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. That's one. That's already 5. I put Sam Darnold.
I said top 10.
Right. Sam Darnold. I want to look at the teams just to make sure I have it going right now. Josh Allen, I wouldn't put Tua, not Aaron Rodgers. I would put Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. I would not put C.J. Stroud. Justin Herbert. Wouldn't put Bo Nix. I'm tempted to put Bo Nix, but I won't.
I wouldn't put him.
Jaden Daniel. Jalen Hurts. Yeah, I'd put Jalen Hurts in.
I don't know about him.
Absolutely, I'd put Jalen Hurts in there.
I don't know about him.
Jordan Love, do I already have him? No, Jordan Love.
I don't know about him either.
Come on.
He didn't play so hot last week.
Baker Mayfield. Absolutely. Come on.
Baker Mayfield. Look at all the interceptions he's thrown this year.
You were defending Kirk Cousins for his interceptions. He leads the league in interceptions. We still think Josh Allen's a great player, but he was throwing interceptions. But he had 18 interceptions last year. I don't even think you realize. Baker Mayfield has nearly a 72% completion percentage, 4,300 yards.
Maybe Brock Purdy is a number 11th quarterback.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, he's at least the 11th quarterback.
Number 11. Okay, there's 32 teams in the NFL. So I think he's going to get a good contract. I think he deserves it. It won't be $60 million, but it will be over 50.
I agree, 50, but you
probably
come at
over
me
53 to 55 is what I'm thinking. Maybe even a little higher than that, somewhere between 50.
Sam Darnold is proven to be a $50 million a year quarterback.
They're saying and that's in year he might get a $25 million a year contract.
Sam Darnold?
Yeah, that's what I was reading. I was reading that this afternoon. We're going to talk about Sam Darnold. I was saying they're saying that he's
making at least 40. He's making at least 40. He has to. Just look, he turned a team that was projected to get 7 wins, and right now he's doubled that and could add +1.
Oh, he's had a great season.
Absolutely.
No doubt about it.
All right, let's get into another phenomenal player because I do want to talk about him. This is just a punch in the face for every Giants fan because Saquon has had an historic season, surpassing 2,000 yards, which he's only the 9th player in NFL history to do that, and he also has led the Eagles to an NFC East title, as well as the number 2 seed, and he's only 101 yards away to break Eric Dickerson's single-season rushing record, and he could do it against his former team, the New York Giants. That's the time he has the moment to set history potentially. But there's also a big question mark of should they even bother sending him out there because they already secured a playoff spot. Their seeding cannot change. So do you want? He's also rushed more attempts than he's ever had in his entire career. So there's a big question of whether or not they should even put him out there. But with history on the line, do you think Saquon should go for the rushing record in Week 18, or should the Eagles rest a bunch of their starters in time for the playoffs?
Well, they haven't made the decision yet. And Sirianni said, I'm going to talk it over with our staff. I'm going to talk to the players. I'm going to talk to the GM. I'm going to talk to the owner to make sure we're making the right decision. He did let Devonta Smith get the rookie total yards record back when he was a rookie. They played him when they were resting lots of other players and threw him the ball a lot, so he got that record. So there is precedent for Sirianni letting players go for records in games that are meaningless. So he needs 101 yards for the record. The Giants give up 141 yards. Is the record that important? When you look at Eric Dickerson, he did it in 16 games. And you look at O.J. Simpson, he got 2,000 yards in a 14-game season. So what would he have done if he'd had 2 more games? He might have put it way out of reach. I don't know. But, Barkley sat in a number of games in the fourth quarter this year just because he'd done so well. I mean, in the Giants game, he had 175 or 176 yards. And, he didn't even play in the fourth quarter. And I think there were another 4 games that he didn't play. Oh, there were 4 games, I think, additional games that he sat in the fourth quarter because they were so far ahead. So, Dickerson, he got the record carrying the ball at least 20 times a game in 16 games. Barkley has had 6 games where he carried the ball less than 20 times. And as I mentioned, he sat out the fourth quarter in 4 games. I think that he's the 9th player to rush for 2,000 yards. Maybe he should be just happy with that. And he says that he says he'll do what's best for the team. I want a banner. I want to win the Super Bowl. So that's good for him. I think that saying the team's more important than my record goes over well. But doing it against the Giants, I'm sure he'd love to do that. And 10 of his 16 games, he's had more than 100 yards, and he averages 125 yards a game. So he can, if they put him in there in this last game of the season, the Giants, what are they playing? I think they've kind of given up. Look at how they played the last few weeks. So
Drew Lock had a perfect game last week. Took him out of the number 1 spot for the draft.
Yeah. So I just think. I'm not sure what's going to happen, to be honest with you, but maybe they play him for a half.
Well, here's a big flaw in that argument with, he's playing a 17th game. We do realize he has fewer carries than Eric Dickerson has. Take the games out of it. He's touched the ball fewer times running. He's ran the ball. I
mentioned that. Dickerson had 20 carries a game.
Per game. He had 379 carries in 16 games. Saquon has 345 in 16 games. So the 17th game argument is thrown out the window because he's ran the ball fewer times than Eric Dickerson has. So that, to me, I don't really care about. But yeah, absolutely. Go for it. Do it. When you have history on the line, you do it every single time. Yes, is there a risk of injury? Absolutely there is. But there is in the Super Bowl, the Conference Championship, Week 1, Week 6, even in the bye week. There's a room for injury everywhere. But when you have an opportunity to set NFL history, a record that has been sitting there for 40 years, and not only will you break a 40-year record, you'll do it against your former team who let you, by the way, franchise tagged you, then gave a quarterback a $40 million deal that they got rid of in year 2 of that deal, didn't even finish the season with him, then wouldn't pay you in this offseason $250,000 more because of the ideology, what's our offensive identity going to be? We're not going to hand the ball off to a $12 million running back. We're paying our quarterback $40 million. By the way, that makes no sense because now the Eagles are using a $53 million, $52 million quarterback and handing it off to a $13 million a year running back, excuse me. So that whole ideology, that's the biggest and probably could be job-crippling stain for Joe Schoen, is letting Saquon walk after John Mara even said in Hard Knocks that Saquon was the most popular player and he couldn't even bear. He would have a very difficult time sleeping at night if Saquon did go over to the Eagles, which he ended up doing. But Saquon has more yards per attempt than Eric Dickerson. He has fewer carries. He's 101 yards away from breaking the record. I would absolutely go for it because you'd be doing it not only to break a 40-year record, you'd be doing it against your former team and probably sitting in the stands, your former GM who let you go after you kept saying that you wanted to be a lifelong Giant and you dealt with the franchise tag. And then they gracefully basically let you go into free agency. They let you do whatever you want. You sign with their arch rival, the Philadelphia Eagles. There's an opportunity here to set NFL history. You go for it every single time. You're also going up against the 31st best running defense that the New York Giants have. So there's an opportunity for you to have a phenomenal game. And the last time you played them, you put up your second highest run total for the season at 176 yards on only 17 attempts. You were at 10.4 yards an attempt. You also had a touchdown. This is a beautiful opportunity for you to set NFL history. I am 100% on board with the idea that you go for it because it is this close. This close.
Yeah. Hasn't come around very often. When was the last time there was a 2000?
Derrick Henry in 2020.
2020. So Derrick Henry, how many yards he got now? He might get to 2,000. I don't know. He's got about 1,900 now, I think.
1783.
1783.
117 yards.
Won't get to 2,000.
No, 217 yards.
Excellent year, though. Wow, what a year. And so I hear where you're coming from. I'm not sure what's going to happen, to be honest with you. I'm sure he'd love to get it against the Giants. I think if he looked back now and said, if I'd gotten the extra $250,000, I probably would have stayed with the Giants. I'm pretty happy to be with the Eagles. I got a chance to go to the Super Bowl now. I doubt I would have had that with the Giants, particularly the way they played this year. So I don't think Saquon Barkley's unhappy that he's a Philadelphia Eagle, or that he's probably. I don't think he has that big of hard feelings against the Giants either. I mean, the things worked out very well for him. So we'll see what happens on Sunday.
Nah, I think that Saquon, why would he keep any bad feelings towards the Giants? Or good feelings towards the Giants. They let him go. And now they put him back into a game where he ended up tearing his ACL. After he was limping, they put him back in and then he tore his ACL. He had to deal with Daniel Jones, his very, very, bottom of the pack play, and then one little spike year, which, by the way, the numbers say that running the football that year, if he had over 100 yards, I just looked at the numbers, Daniel Jones had over a 110 passer rating. He had a 72% completion percentage, and they were 5-0. So the running game was the reason why Daniel Jones was so great and not even that great. I always said why he was decent that year. I'm not calling 15 passing touchdowns a great season. If you want to include the rushing, 22 total touchdowns. Yeah. I'm not saying that's a great season because it isn't. That would be a good season.
The Giants made a mistake. They obviously made a mistake. And now they don't have either of the players. Jones is with Vikings and Barkley with the Eagles. I got to tell you, I remember Eric Dickerson that year when Eric Dickerson got the record, man. What a year he had. And that year they went to the Bears in the playoffs, and it was unbelievably cold. And Dickerson couldn't do anything. They couldn't get anything going. I think Dieter Brock was their quarterback, and it was all about Dickerson, and the Bears knew it, and he didn't get anything done in the playoffs. So we'll see what the Eagles do.
I would also like to just throw that out here. I want to make sure I get this accurate. So I want to make sure the record stood for how long before Dickerson broke it? Who was the guy to break it? It was O.J. Simpson in 1973.
And a 14-game season.
Right. But I also want to throw this out here. Dickerson broke the record in 15 games. He went out there in the 16th game to distance himself from O.J. Simpson,
and which was a game that was meaningless as well.
Correct.
He had 98 yards in that game.
Correct. So once again, the argument for Saquon should sit because 17th game meaning nothing. Dickerson did that to distance himself from the next highest person, which was O.J., who he broke it from. In 15 games instead of 14 games, which OJ did it in. It's the exact same situation. When you have the opportunity to set NFL history and do it against your former team who let you go for some stupid reasons, you do it. 100%.
Particularly, it's a record that stood for 40 years, too.
Right.
That's pretty impressive. People will want to see that, whether he gets it or not.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take a quick break, but coming up, the Vikings have a serious Sam Darnold dilemma after putting up a phenomenal game against the Green Bay Packers and now going up against the Lions, which could have number 1 seed in the NFC implications. What should they do next year with Sam Darnold on a 1-year deal this year, heading into free agency, as well as they just drafted J.J. McCarthy, who dealt with a preseason injury. We'll talk about that, as well as we could see the return of one Rex Ryan in the NFL. We'll talk about that right after this.
traveling can be a nightmare. Why? You can't watch your favorite shows abroad. You can't trust public Wi-Fi spots anymore. And when you return, roaming bills kill your vibe. Unless you get a NordVPN and Saley deal. NordVPN will increase your privacy online. And Saley, a global eSIM data app, will save you from those unexpected roaming charges. Grab the 2-year NordVPN deal with 76% off and get up to 20 gigabytes Saley eSIM data gift.
Whether you're just discovering your voice or taking your show to the next level, you know what the world needs to hear. All you have to do is say it. With Spotify, set up your podcast. Your food podcast. Your mindfulness podcast. Your never thought you'd get this far podcast. And watch those sparks fly.
I put a picture of the
Drop the episode anywhere people listen. And find out who they're cooking with. Where they're finding inner balance. And why they love your show. You're already a creator. Now you can create, connect, and get paid for your passion with one single free tool. Spotify for podcasters. Talk where the world listens.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name is Stephen Harvey. It's great to have you in today on this New Year's Eve Tuesday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. Let's jump into our next topic of today's show. So, Sam Darnold. What a crazy situation this has been. Sam Darnold has been a revelation for the Vikings, stepping in after J.J. McCarthy's preseason injury, and has led the Vikings to a 14-2 record with over 4,000 passing yards and 35 touchdowns. This is obviously his career best season. But there currently is no long-term plan for Sam Darnold. He's expected to hit free agency, but the Vikings could franchise tag him if they decide to do so. But we have J.J. McCarthy, who just drafted at number 10, I believe. So there, you do have a rookie there. Is Sam Darnold going to be a mentor? Is he going to be your starter? Who knows? But here's my question to you. What do you think the Vikings should do with Sam Darnold?
I think it depends on how they feel about J.J. McCarthy. Do they really feel he's the future? They say he is. But do they really deep down in their hearts, in their minds, think that J.J. McCarthy is the future after Sam Darnold's had the year that he's had this year? Lots of outlets are saying that the Vikings want Darnold back. Well, they want Darnold back, and they still say that McCarthy is their future. How do those two fit together? And what's McCarthy going to think about that if they do bring Darnold back? I mean, they did sign Daniel Jones. For when he left the Giants and picked him up. He's on their practice squad, and other teams have inquired about Daniel Jones apparently in the last few weeks, but Jones wants to stay with the Vikings. But they say that picking up Jones wasn't an indication of Darnold returning or not, or concern of McCarthy's recovery. He's just there for the 2024 season to make sure that if Darnold gets hurt down the stretch, that they've got someone they can put in there that could help keep their offense running. So I think it's a very intriguing. Darnold's had 4 game-winning drives this season. He leads the 8th best scoring offense. He's the 4th best in passer rating. He says, I'm really stuck in the moment, that he's not looking ahead. He's not looking back. He's 27 years old. He could get a contract that pays this is what they're saying. I'm hearing this, Nate. $25 million, which seems very low to me based on how he's played this year. How he finishes the year will be a big factor, I think. If the Vikings, wind up in the Super Bowl and they win the Super Bowl, well, then Darnold, man, he's in heaven. He's going to get big offers, and the Vikings would have to be competitive there if he actually won the Super Bowl for them. That's a long way off, so we don't know what really is going to happen, but the Vikings do have $70 million worth of cap space. And so if they want to keep him, they can afford it. There are really only 2 college quarterbacks that are potentially going to start in the NFL next year. That's Ward and Sanders. Also, it looks like a weak free agency class for NFL quarterbacks. Darnold would be the head of that list for sure. They say that if he does get to free agency, he's going to be very selective. He wants to avoid a Jets or Carolina situation like he had and with past teams, which was not good for him. And I'm sure he doesn't want to risk having happen again. What coaches get hired, that could have an effect on where he might go, depending on what schemes the new coaches want and whether they think Darnold might be able to fit into their scheme. He could also leave and they sign Jones to be the bridge quarterback to McCarthy if they really feel McCarthy is their future. So the question to me, it comes down to, do the Vikings really think J.J. McCarthy is their future? If they do, then I think they sign Jones to be the bridge quarterback and bring McCarthy in. If they don't, then they really should think hard about hanging on to Sam Darnold, who's really done good things for them this year.
I think if you did a one-on-one competition in camp, just like the Raiders did this offseason between Daniel Jones and J.J. McCarthy would blow Daniel Jones out of the water. In the preseason, McCarthy looked like the best quarterback in the draft. He was performing at a very high level. So I think if you had a true competition between those two quarterbacks, McCarthy would absolutely slaughter Daniel Jones in that competition because Jones is not a good quarterback. That's why, besides, injury reasons, injury guarantee reasons, he may get brought up. I saw somewhere we could see Daniel Jones out there for who knows. I don't know. I saw somewhere they could bring him up at least for the active roster. They obviously won't start him because they're playing the Detroit Lions. But when it comes to this, and I'm going to hold you accountable to the Daniel Jones may start week 1 because you and John were very high on that. There's two ways they can go about this. One would be you give him an offer. Let's say they do give him $25 million. He doesn't accept. He asks for $50. You could say, okay, we'll franchise tag you for $41 million. Even ground right there. There's always that back way option of just franchise tagging him and shutting him up for a year. And then you could say, well, if he performs like crap for the first half of the season, well, then we could bring J.J. McCarthy out there. But this has happened. We just saw it happen. You just signed Kirk Cousins, the Falcons did, to a $45 million a year contract, 3 years, and then you drafted Michael Penix, 8th overall in this exact draft. And we've already seen Michael Penix out there now. So it's not unprecedented to see this type of a situation. We just saw it. We just saw it happen. And I think that if you really had little faith in J.J. McCarthy, why did you draft him at all then? Yes, you have you traded up with the Jets to get to the 11th pick or 10th pick or something like that. But why would you draft a quarterback if you didn't like him? Sean Payton loved Bo Nix. That's why you drafted him at 12. I'm sure that the Bears love Caleb Williams, and I'm sure the Commanders love Jaden Daniels, and I think that the Patriots love Drake May. That's why you draft those quarterbacks that high and in the first round. I think all 6 quarterbacks could be great. When they have their opportunity to succeed. I think Drake May is in a very unfortunate situation where his supporting cast offensive line is ranked the worst in the NFL. Caleb Williams, similar situation, just a terrible offensive line. Jaden Daniels is excelling with the talent around him. I think Michael Penix has looked pretty good so far in his only 2 games. And Bo Nix looks like currently the second best rookie quarterback in the NFL. And then J.J. McCarthy in the preseason, I know it's the preseason, but he did and was graded the highest rookie quarterback in the preseason. When it comes to Sam Darnold, though, we now see what Kyle Shanahan saw when they brought him in and said we could revitalize his career. And there's a reason why Kevin O'Connell signed him on a 1-year, $10 million contract to then be what would have been J.J. McCarthy's backup quarterback if he didn't get hurt. And now we're seeing how Darnold could succeed under Kevin O'Connell's system. He has instant rapport with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson and everybody like that, as well as Naylor, who's getting a bunch of targets in this past game against the Packers. He had a very, very good game in this one. But it's a matter of, do you trust him enough to give him a long-term contract now? I think if he goes out against the Detroit Lions and has another phenomenal game, 300 yards, multi-touchdowns, 1 or fewer interceptions, then I'm saying you could pay him $35, $40 million a year. Give him a Baker Mayfield contract. I think he's above right now a Baker Mayfield contract. I know you don't think Baker is around the top 10 quarterback, but I'll give him a Baker Mayfield contract.
He makes $30 million.
Right. 3 years, $100 million. Because we have to realize Sam Darnold is he has the second most in NFL history, second most games with a pass rating above 100. He has 13. Aaron Rodgers with 14 in 2020 has the most in NFL history. And he already put up 100-plus passer rating against the Lions in their earlier game this year. So there's an opportunity for him to tie NFL history. Not only that, let me just go to this one. Darnold became the first quarterback ever to win 14 games with a team in his first year with that team. He also joined Kurt Warner as the second quarterback ever to win 5 games and throw for 1,400-plus yards and 14-plus touchdowns in the month of December.
Do you think there's something to the commentary that Kevin O'Connell makes quarterbacks better?
It's the same thing as Kyle Shanahan. Yes, I think there is. Because
he made Kirk Cousins look like an All-Pro and was an All-Pro with O'Connell. Look at Sam Darnold. He looks. I can't believe how well he's played. He's getting better now too. I think he had a dip there where he wasn't playing so well. O'Connell stuck with him, gave him a lot of credit, supported him. Darnold bounced back. We'll see what happens on Sunday. That's going to be a really telling game, I think. This is for all the marbles for the first seed. As Mahomes says, winning the first seed is like winning a playoff game. So all the marbles on Sunday, Lions, Vikings, Darnold against Goff. It's going to be great to watch.
I also want to say, I'll just add on to the other example. In 2019, the Eagles drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round when they gave Carson Wentz a 9-figure contract. So, again, not completely, unprecedented when you have this type of situation. We just saw it this offseason, and we saw it back in 2019. And I'm sure there are other similar examples. Tom Brady playing at a high level. Belichick decides to draft Jimmy Garoppolo in the second round. I mean, we see this all the time. Belichick drafted a number of quarterbacks surprisingly high. Drafted Jarrett Stidham in the 4th round. He's currently a backup to Zach Wilson, who's the backup to Bo Nix. So I don't think this is completely out of the water. I think what is out of the water is Sam Darnold's.
Zach Wilson was inactive last week.
I didn't look at the active.
Yeah, he was.
Inactive.
I think Stidham's the backup quarterback.
Still, you go to the Broncos and you lose to a rookie quarterback, Bo Nix, who outplays you.
Well, Bo Nix, I see, is the future of the franchise.
Because he is. He's playing at a future franchise level.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones will be released. There is no team that's going to make him. I said this about Baker Mayfield, and I've said this about Mac Jones. I'm doing another quarterback prediction. No team, except barring any injuries, no team will go into 2025 with Daniel Jones as their confident starting quarterback. Not a single team.
We'll wait and see.
Well, you think that you really?
I think he could be a bridge quarterback. I think he could be the Vikings'
Why not just franchise Sam Darnold after a 14, potentially 15-2 season?
Because they're going to have to pay him. They will only have to pay Daniel Jones maybe $20 million. We're going to have to pay him that much. So, if they really believe McCarthy, if they really believe McCarthy is that good, and you know what, if McCarthy had stayed healthy, he might have started over Darnold.
He was expected to start over Darnold.
He was expected to. So if they think he can come back and do that, then Daniel Jones will be the backup.
Why not make Sam Darnold the starting quarterback or the backup after leading a team?
Why would you pay a quarterback, a quarterback, and pay him $41 million to be the backup?
Ask the Atlanta Falcons.
Basically a rookie.
Ask the Atlanta Falcons.
They did not hire Kirk Cousins to be a backup.
Right, but now he is.
He is now, but that took, 15 games to have that happen. 14 games.
Why not do the exact same thing? Sam Darnold's the starting quarterback. First of all, Aaron Rodgers.
I don't think Sam Darnold's going to want that. He's got a chance to start.
Sam Darnold will be the starter. It's Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love. Jordan Love sat 3 years after the Packers moved up in the first round to draft him. And he's a very young quarterback. Sam Darnold's
27. He's going to get an offer that's going to be probably 4 years, 3 or 4 year offer. He's not going to want to take a year or a 2 year contract from Minnesota.
Who says it would be? Kirk Cousins is on a 3-year deal right now.
Because McCarthy is not going to be happy sitting for 4 years.
Who says? Jordan Love sat for 3 years. McCarthy's not sitting. He's hurt.
No, but he's going to be back next year.
Right. Oh. So this would be year one of him sitting because he physically can't play right now.
I know, but if they give Darnold a 4-year deal, then McCarthy wouldn't get in there forever. It's going to be.
We thought the exact same thing about Michael Penix. Why draft a guy 8th overall?
Okay, well then if you think that's going to happen, you don't want to give somebody a huge contract. You want to Pick a bridge
Atlanta Falcons.
Use a bridge quarterback to get to McCarthy.
The
if he's
Atlanta
that
Falcons
good.
literally did that this offseason.
I don't know.
They
We'll
gave
see.
Kirk Cousins $45 million per year to be their starter. He didn't look good from the very beginning in week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they waited until now to put in Penix. $45 million. And now he's probably going to get released by the end of the year. Daniel Jones signed a $40 million a year contract, and he's gone after 2 years. I'm not saying he stays the full 4 years.
Well,
J.J. McCarthy's turning 21? He's an incredibly young quarterback.
I don't think that either team spent that kind of money with the expectation that those things were going to happen.
Then why draft a quarterback 8th overall for 4 years down the line? It makes no sense.
That's what I'm saying. I think they'll go to a bridge. If they really believe in McCarthy, they'll go to a bridge quarterback. And McCarthy will be in there by week 6 or 7.
So do you want to go compete for Super Bowls, or do you want to be middle of the pack until you get to J.J. McCarthy? Because Sam Darnold's out here competing for a Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah, he is. And
Daniel Jones will send you directly into the ground.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying if the Vikings make it to the Super Bowl,
they don't even need to make it to the Super Bowl. They went 14-2, potentially 15-2.
Yeah.
With Sam Darnold, who was absolutely shattered by the Jets. He was seeing ghosts. He goes to the Panthers, plays okay, nearly beats Tom Brady in his last year.
Sports outlets are saying that the Vikings want him back. The Vikings want him back.
I absolutely would. If he wants $50 million, I'd just be okay. I'll give you $41 million for 1 year. You could be our starter.
Yeah, well,
and if you perform well, there you go, 3-year contract.
What the competition might be for him. You know, the competition. He'll get some offers. He may not get the offer he wants from the Vikings to stay. He may get a better offer from somebody else.
It doesn't matter. They could just franchise tag him. He could talk to whatever team he wants. The Patriots, the Giants, the Jets. Who cares? The Vikings just be like, okay, yeah, we'll franchise tag. We want you back.
I don't think the Patriots will be making an offer to him.
You'd be surprised. They're
not going to make an offer to him. They have Drake May.
They currently are looking for a head coach in my guess, because Gerard Mayo, it was worse than Bill Belichick at his worst.
Yeah,
and that's saying something.
I think Gerard Mayo will be there another year for sure.
At least, I don't know, Mike Vrabel's available. Ben Johnson's available. How many other great head coach or coordinators are going to be available? Gerard Mayo was homegrown, and it's ended up maybe you kept him around a little too long. It's not looking good. Not looking good. But speaking about homegrown and maybe staying around a little bit too long, Rex Ryan told ESPN Radio that he expects the Jets to talk to him after the season's over for a potential head coach job opportunity. Rex Ryan, who led the Jets to 2 AFC Championship appearances in his first 2 years, 2009 to 2010. He was there from 2009 to 2014. He believes he will be interviewed for the role, and the Jets are also considering Ron Rivera, who they will be meeting with, I believe, on Thursday. Rex Ryan got interviewed to be the DC of the Cowboys just this past offseason, but instead the Cowboys went with Mike Zimmer, who was the Minnesota Vikings head coach a couple of years ago. So my question is, do you think that the Jets should bring back Rex Ryan as their head coach?
I like what the New York Post said about it. They say this interview brings lots of nostalgia and an inevitable disaster. So he's 62 years old. His record with the Jets was 46-50. He's 4-2 in the playoffs. He has a lot of charisma. I'll give him that. He pumps up the players. He does some crazy things. He's controversial. The Jets have made mistake after mistake after mistake. Is bringing back Rex Ryan the right solution to their problem? I would say he'd be better than Ron Rivera. I mean, Ron Rivera is going to interview for the job, too. They're both 62 years old. Ron Rivera, 102 and 103 with 2 ties in his 13 years of head coaching. I think Rex might be a better choice than Ron Rivera, but there are a lot of candidates out there. As you mentioned, Mike Vrabel being one of them. I would pick Mike Vrabel over Rex Ryan for sure. He says he hasn't had any conversations, but believes the process will begin after the regular season ends. The Jets are interviewing GMs too, right? They need a new GM as well. They interviewed former GMs from the Falcons, Dimitroff, Titans, Robinson, and the Reese's Senior Bowl director, Nagy. ESPN analyst Louis Riddick is going to get an interview too to be the GM. He'd be an interesting choice, huh? They retained consultant 33rd Team to help them with the search for the GM, and that's Mike Tannenbaum and Spielman. who helped the Commanders in their search, which was quite successful, I would say. The Jets haven't made the playoffs since the AFC Championship game in 2010 when Rex Ryan was the coach. I don't think Rex Ryan is going to be the next coach of the Jets.
I would love to see it. It's interesting. It makes the Jets, again, relevant, and it adds some old-timey flair to it. But is it a good idea? Well, you look around the NFL, and you look at the head coaching availabilities, and you look at who needs a head coach and what coaches will become available to sign. And I'm looking at two in particular, two that are blatantly obvious, but it's the question of what do you want? Do you want to improve your defense? Okay, well, then there's two options. One of them is Rex Ryan, who did just interview for the Cowboys defensive coordinator job this past offseason. And then there's obviously Mike Vrabel. Do you want a more offensive-themed head coach? Well, then you got to go with Ben Johnson, obviously. And I think that if the Jets were to make a decision, I think Ben Johnson would be their number one choice. And then if you're thinking about a culture builder, I think that also falls into Mike Vrabel and into Rex Ryan. I don't think that Ben Johnson should go into a Bears job or into a Jets job, two big markets, two hungry markets, and think, I could solve it. I could fix it. I could turn things around. First-time head coach, that is an incredibly difficult task to do. And then, apparently, this was sourced right before the show started, actually. I'm going to quote this. Barring any unforeseen change, the Jets are expected to move on from quarterback Aaron Rodgers and wide receiver Davante Adams this offseason. Source tells that the relationship between owner Woody Johnson and Rodgers is irreparable. That's expected. Rodgers was gone. That was hands down going to happen. Rodgers, whether Woody Johnson's going to force him out or Rodgers leaves himself, that was going to happen. And obviously, as I said several times on the show, where Rodgers goes or where a friend of Adams goes, Davante will follow suit. He did that with the Green Bay Packers. He went over to go visit his buddy Derek Carr, who was there for 5 seconds, and then he forced his way out to go team up with his buddy Aaron Rodgers in New York. And now, after one full season of playing, Rodgers is on his way out because he ruined any ounce of a relationship he had with the owner and with his own damn players, except Davante Adams. And now it gets even worse because now, according to NFL Network, it seems that if Rodgers remains the starting quarterback of the Jets, expect star young receiver Garrett Wilson to request a trade. That is a very difficult situation for any incoming GM and any incoming head coach who does not have experience being a head coach to deal with. The first obvious decision is to get rid of Aaron Rodgers, which then means you probably have to get off of Davante Adams as well, unless you hit an absolute gem in the draft, which I think the Jets should do. I would give a large package over to the New England Patriots for the first overall pick. We have plenty of defensive players. The defense for the Jets, yes, the performance level hasn't been the same as when Robert Saleh was there, but the personnel is still very attractive to a lot of teams. DJ Reed is going to hit free agency. He already said that he wants out. So I expect him to be gone, but then you also have a bunch of other options. Will McDonald, who's a young player. Sauce Gardner's going to need to get paid. I'm not saying you trade these guys necessarily, but they are options that you can do. Williams, CJ Mosley. You have a lot of pieces defensively that could be enticing for a New England defense that hasn't been great this year. That's just the truth. The defense has not lived up to the numbers when Bill Belichick was the head coach. Currently, I want to give an exact ranking. They're 23rd. So not only are they not living up when they were 7th last year, they're incredibly worse than last year. So I would definitely call Rex Ryan. I would see his vision for the Jets moving forward. And if any ounce of, I'd like to keep Aaron Rodgers is there, if I'm Woody Johnson, I would say this interview ends now. We are not going to hire you. Because if you bring Aaron Rodgers back, it will be more of the same. In the big-time moments when you need Rodgers to step up, he will crumble as always. He's a 41-year-old quarterback who is not aging gracefully. And the only thing that would be, honestly, the funniest thing that the entire NFL realm could do next season is if the Vikings sign Aaron Rodgers to be their bridge quarterback to J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah.
and keep up the streak of
I'm
Jets quarterbacks going to Minnesota.
I'm shocked at your analysis, Nate. I mean, Rex Ryan is a defensive quarterback.
As is Mike
head
Vrabel.
coach.
As is Mike Vrabel.
Right, and you're the one that says it's an offensive game now.
Yes, it is.
You hire offensive coaches. You don't hire defensive coaches. And you wouldn't do that for the Jets. Their offense has been awful. Their offense has been terrible. Even
agree.
with the MVP Aaron Rodgers out there trying to run it. It was awful this year, right? The defense is still pretty good. You might even retain, probably, I'd say Albrecht is gone. He's not going to want to stay there in the situation that they have. Or who knows? Maybe he would stay. And so the defense, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't want to bring Rex Ryan in. He's a defensive coach. You need somebody that can make the offense. Something happen with the offense, which has been terrible.
I agree.
So it's Ben Johnson.
So
Ben Johnson. And by the way, there have been first-year coaches that have done extremely well. Rex Ryan was one of them. In his first year as head coach, he took him to the AFC Championship game. So it does happen. It doesn't mean that it can't happen.
Correct.
And, so Ben Johnson could be just as equally capable of taking the Jets to the playoffs as Rex, and he's an offensive coach. So I think maybe he would be head and shoulders over either Riverboat Ron or Rex Ryan.
Well, I'll tell you what, the Jets at that time were not the complete mess that they were now. They were a playoff team in 2006. They had a winning record with Eric Mangini in 2008. They got off him. He was 9-7, wasn't good enough. So it wasn't the complete crap show that it is right now. I mean, the Jets have the longest active playoff drought in the 4 major sports in America. They can't get quarterback right. They can't. And by the way, here's one thing. If you say, yeah, we'll keep Nathaniel Hackett, that's another time where you're like, okay, this interview's over. We're not going to hire you. Nathaniel Hackett was there for Aaron Rodgers.
He's gone.
That's the only reason he was hired. That's why the Broncos hired him. That's why the Jets hired him. For Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he'll be back.
I don't either.
Right. So hire a good offensive coordinator. For instance, D'Amico Ryans. Bobby Slowick is a pretty good offensive coordinator. Now, C.J. Stroud's having a big sophomore slump this season, but they're still in the playoffs. They're still leading their division. So you can hire a good OC. Dan Campbell's a defensive guy. He's a walk-around guy. He has Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn as OC and DC. If you have a good coordinator, Rex Ryan and Mike Vrabel will be culture guys. Set the tone. Keep guys accountable. I'm not sure Jeff Ulbrich, Robert Saleh, or Todd Downing are keeping people accountable.
Rex Ryan never attended any offensive meetings and when he was head coach of the Jets.
Maybe he
didn't have anything to do with the offense. He's a defensive coach.
That's
why
you
Jets'
hire
problem is offense.
Well, Bill Belichick didn't do a lot of offense.
You got to get somebody that knows how to construct an offense that can move the ball and score some points. Nobody's been able to do that with the Jets.
Well, Bill Belichick didn't touch upon offense. He was a heavy defensive guy. He let Brady and McDaniels
but he had Josh McDaniel as his OC.
My entire point. Hire a good OC. That is my exact point. Yeah, you're saying that he never went to an offensive meeting. Hire a good OC.
I think the Jets should go for an offensive coach.
Well, Ben Johnson's your only pick, and you're going to get outbid by the Chicago Bears.
Well, then they should try to get him.
You're going to get outbid by the Chicago Bears. They're desperate for a head coach, and I think Mike Vrabel will be a better choice
there.
The
New York Jets could outbid the Bears if they wanted to. The Jets are owned by the chairman of Johnson & Johnson. They got plenty of money. They don't have anything to worry about. The Bears, on the other hand, they have to make their money from the team. McCaskey is not the head of any big or owner of any big shareholder in any big company. He's there. He just runs the Bears. I don't think there'll be. I think the Jets could outbid for Ben Johnson's services easily.
The only thing that goes against me entertaining the idea of Rex Ryan is generally after a long hiatus of not coaching, the chances that you'll succeed are pretty low because in 2006, I don't know if you remember, the Raiders rehired Art Shell, and after a 6-year break, he went 2-14 and was canned after one season. And then Josh McDaniels as well. He after 12 years since being the head coach of Denver, he goes to Las Vegas and goes a total of 9-16 and gets fired after week 8 in his second year after going 3-5. So long hiatus, not great when it comes to being a head coach in the NFL, but you need a culture guy.
It's going to be interesting to watch. He will get an interview, and it will be the media is going to be crazy about it in New York. So it'll be fun to watch.
I would absolutely. I would entertain the idea, because why not? Ron Rivera
I think he's
he had
a poor
one
choice.
he had one good year with Washington, and we can't
He had some good years with Carolina.
exactly. But we're talking about he had one phenomenal. They never had back-to-back winning seasons in Carolina. They had one tremendous year, 15-1 in Carolina, made it to the Super Bowl, and they got absolutely shellacked in that Super Bowl by the Denver Broncos.
I did make it to the Super Bowl. Can't say that about the Jets since 1968.
Well, they made it to two AFC championship
Yeah,
games.
but they didn't make it to the Super Bowl.
They should have against Pittsburgh. They should have.
They didn't, though.
Should have. I know, you're right. They did.
I can remember Rex throwing his headset onto the ground when it was clear they weren't going to win.
Well, Mark Sanchez was your quarterback at that time.
Yeah.
Mark Sanchez didn't win that much. After those 2 years, what else did he do? I think that wraps up today's show. We thank you for the constant support as always. You can go to drsquatch.com/the Harvey Hour or use the link down below. You get $10 off orders of $30 more for our new customers. We appreciate the constant support as always. We'll be back on Friday. We got a lot to talk about. Week 18.
See you next year.
Yeah. We're at what? 4 hours and 15 minutes out.
Yeah. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year indeed. We'll see you 2025 on Friday. We're talking Joe Burrow. I meant to talk about him actually today, but after hearing some news about the Chiefs game, I'm not very happy about it. So we'll talk about that on Friday. So make sure you're here 6:30 p.m. Eastern right here on YouTube. We'll be here giving you the hottest takes possible on the internet.
Happy New Year, Grandpa.
Traveling can be a nightmare. Why? You can't watch your favorite shows abroad. You can't trust public Wi-Fi spots anymore. And when you return, roaming bills kill your vibe. Unless you get a NordVPN and Saley deal. NordVPN will increase your privacy online. And Saley, a global eSIM data app, will save you from those unexpected roaming charges. Grab the 2-year NordVPN deal with 76% off and get up to 20 gigabytes Saley